On behalf of the Coalition of Concerned Liberians, I want to welcome each and every one of you here this evening. I know we have representatives from different organizations and political parties, and from the Liberian embassy in Washington, D.C. We expect the Liberian ambassador here. But I just wanted to take this time to welcome each and every one of you and tell you a little bit about the organization. CCC is an organization that started in 2008, August, during the heat of the Liberian Civil War. And the purpose of the establishment was to lobby the U.S. government to help U.S. government in an effort to bring lasting peace in Liberia. And the mission was to help rebuild Liberia. So to date, CCL has remained in the forefront of advocacy and several major concerns, including immigration protection and dual citizenship. So now that we have had at least a decade of peace and stability in Liberia, the organization is now taking another trend, and that is towards more of a seeking solution of the numerous challenges that we have in the rebuilding process of Liberia, and that will be done through intellectual discussions like what we're going to have here today. And the topic today here is corruption, the fault of government. Is it the fault of government or the product of society? And there are more issues to be discussed. This is a quarterly forum that we have, and so you are here today to discuss this issue, and we're going to call you again from time to time to discuss various issues as they come up. So we want to again welcome you on behalf of the steering committee and our chair, Mr. John Lord, who said thank you for coming.
We'll now have opening remarks by Mr. Jeff Gonkoya Duwana, Deputy Chief of Mission, Republic of Liberia, Washington, D.C.
Mr. John Lloyd, Chairman of this forum, and members of the preparatory committee, Coalition of Concerned Liberians. We should like to thank you for this invitation. I think I got to put it in the logo. With all protocol observed, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of His Excellency Ambassador Jeremiah Sponte, we bring you greetings. The Ambassador regrets that he cannot be with us here today because of all pressing state matters that he is urgently attending at the moment. Therefore, we are gratified on behalf of government to affirm this vision of yours in the commemoration of 10 years of sustainable peace and stability in Liberia and the quest to help rebuild our country. Yes, indeed, it is really you and I can build Liberia with the help of our partners in progress. It is in this connection we do hope that all deliberations here today at this unique town hall meeting will bring results that will resonate with the ideas and the aspiration that is there to help us accept ourselves in a positive direction of rebuilding Liberia. In this forum, we would like to inform you that despite what is sometimes written about home in the print and electronic media, that there is positive development going on in all aspects of the Liberian society. Before I take my seat, let me reassure you that government will always welcome any endeavor by Liberians in the diaspora to initiate efforts towards peace and stability in our country. Thank you.
At this time, we call Mr. John Lloyd to introduce our guest panelists.
Thank you very much, Madam Sue Kennedy, member of CCI Executive Committee. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, I basically would like to thank each and every one of you, members of the clergy, members of government here present, the Liberian Embassy, members of the various political organizations in Liberia who are present here as permanent members of our panel. We greet you on behalf of the steering committee and the board of the Coalition of Concerned Liberia, CCL. This particular forum was formed and designed to tackle issues, as was indicated before, issues that confront our country. The issues are manifold, and we hope to tackle them at every occasion and every opportunity that we can within these series of quarterly forums. But this forum, as we have already shown you, is geared towards the issue of corruption. Why corruption? Well, the choice of our forums and the topics that we select is basically geared towards what the prevailing issues of discussion is within our country. And by all indications, the major indication of the major issues per se in Liberia right now in talk of discussion is corruption. Corruption is an issue, a stubborn issue that has existed for decades and maybe centuries in Liberia. What is corruption? A simple definition would be moral decadence or the lack of ethical principles on the part of any organization, entity, or individual. On a collective basis, we can describe that as a culture within a certain environment. Corruption within the Liberian environment, as we can see, has existed for many decades, throughout all the decades that we all have survived here. And this gathering have people that range from teen age all the way up to maybe 70 or 80 years old. And if corruption has indeed existed for this length of time, from one generation to the other, how do we solve this problem? Is it by removing our government? I think I can remember when I was just a teenager, a government was removed and people were executed for corruption. Now I'm of age and have a child out of college, and there is still corruption. There's been probably several administrations in between. So is it removing one government and replacing it that will kill this problem? Is it any form of change in laws that will change it? These are many issues are what we're here to discuss today. Corruption is a human flaw, a human weakness that can exist from a third world country to the most developed countries, including where we live today. But the problem is, if corruption exists as a culture in a society where not only is it a culture, but a norm, where a person can openly engage in activities that are unethical and is described or seen as normal, then it becomes an epidemic and a serious problem. And that confronts our society and most third world societies. So as Liberians, without the help of so-called experts from other nations or nationality, I believe we are equipped today to discuss this topic. And today we are here with leaders from the various major political groups in our country. We may have about 18 political parties, but as we see, we have about 4. These are the 4 most organized political organizations in America, mainly, that have presence here within the United States. And they are all full-fledged registered political parties in Liberia. That's the criteria that we use in selecting members of our panel. If these individuals representing these parties are going to prepare individuals that will lead our countries in the years ahead, in the election in the next maybe 15 months, or within a presidential election within the next 5 years, we will want to know how they think, what the agendas are, and what they seek to offer. So we welcome you here today, and at this point, I thank you all for gathering, and I will proceed to introduce the members of this panel. Before we proceed to introducing the members of the political entities, I will first introduce our guest panelist today, Mr. Richard Miller. Mr. Miller holds an MBA and a Master of Science degree. He's president and CEO of RR Energy Consulting, and he is a 20-year expert in organization development and strategies, including financial planning and management. He's from Nimba County, and he's chairman of Liberians for Prosperity. So he's an ordinary young Liberian who has been to Liberia recently and has been within leadership within the United States of America. So we have asked him to give an independent perspective on this particular issue within the next 5 minutes, and then we will proceed to introducing the other members of the panel and begin our panel discussion. So we welcome you, and now we will now turn over to Mr. Richard Miller.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman, and thank you to the CCL board. Thank you also to all of you. We know on a Sunday afternoon, there are many other things you could be doing. So we thank you for being here, and thank you for your time. As the chairman indicated, I am the chairman for Liberians for Prosperity. So what does that mean? We're a political grassroots organization. My senior advisor, Dr. Reverend Paike Suku, is here with us. And what we've done over the years is that we recognize that the business of policy, as usual, doesn't always result to meaningful things for our people. Our group, as well as many Liberians, which right now in Liberia we are in all 15 counties, from a standpoint of having a stronghold and having associates who believe that we all love Liberia, who believe that our country is worth fighting for. There is no way any one of us that were born in Liberia, regardless of where we are in the world today, think that we don't have a chance to restore prosperity to our country. Like many of you have gone back and forth, and as we approach this topic of corruption, my view on it is it's very easy when you have not been in a position of leadership because you may be 30,000 feet above and you see a litany of issues. Do you have the judgment? Do you have the temperament to be able to address these issues? Take them head on. But with that said, we know what's happening in Liberia. Our group has taken the tack with working with different communities, whether it's installing wells, providing notebooks, helping fund different tuition for children, because we know what it was like. John and I went to college in West Africa, like many of you who had a good opportunity for good education that has been the basis of where we are today. So we know corruption is a global nemesis, but in particular with Liberia and Africa as a whole, it's a disease. And that is primarily because of ignorance and political immaturity. If you have visited Liberia today, or if you have read about so many things happening in our humble home, our sweet home, the home we love, we're all passionate, we're all strong Liberians, but it's very sad. So what do? My philosophy, as it is Dr. Suku and our organization, we've gone throughout all 15 counties in Liberia and said, listen, I'm not coming here to tell you what's wrong, you already know. But what I'm here to offer you is a solution. So case in point, when I recently went to Liberia, I was there for almost a month, and I took a proposal to the government, a multi-million-dollar proposal that would power Liberia. Again, let me repeat, power the whole country. We all know electricity is a big issue. If you don't have power, economic prosperity is scarce. The way you can really develop, the way we can catch up with the 21st century, and be competitive, technology, okay, education, and all of those other things. So, in respect to that, whether it's the government's fault or as a product of society, as I indicated a few seconds ago, If you don't love the people you lead, you don't have the ability to feel the pain. We do. We understand, just like many of you do. And while we're not yet a political party, our goal is to reach out to political organizations, because if we keep doing the politics as usual, it's not going to work. Our people are tired of listening to the rhetoric. They want solutions. So my organizations, as well as our core leaders, we are doing something about it. I've had a few press conferences when I was there, and I said, and I looked in the mic, and I said, listen, the president understands her responsibility. You cannot abdicate what you can do for the people. There's 4 more years we have before she leaves. We need leadership, and we need it to happen now. So I appreciate this opportunity, and we will continue to reach out to all of you. Our organization is going to be launching officially in Wilmington, Delaware on October 12th. So I'll have more information to pass along. But if any of you, whether you're here or you're outside, take the message to everybody. If you want to do something for Liberia, you want to do something impactful, we understand the problems. Are you ready to offer a solution? If you're ready, talk to all of us. I respect all the political parties that are here, but I don't believe that one group has a monopoly on ideas, a monopoly on the future. We can be great. Liberia right now is classified as a 4th world country, one of 49 countries that's classified as a 4th world country. We were 3rd world. When you go to Liberia, what it will tell you? There's Liberia, there's Africa, and the rest of the world. You think about that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I will proceed to introduce our distinguished members of the political panel here, who will engage you for most of the rest of the evening, and feel free to engage in as much as possible. I will first proceed to introduce the representative from the leading incumbent political party in Liberia, the Unity Party, represented by none other than the Councilor Daya Fambule. Councilor Fambule is a public-spirited patriot who believes in putting public interest above private gains. Lessons well learned from the David A. Clark School of Law, Gaia has enjoyed a fulfilling career in government as well as private sector play for over 30 years. He is married to Samira Fambule and blessed with what he described as great young adults, not enumerated. Gaia has served his country conscientiously as a dedicated flag bearer and public servant. He served as Director of Public Safety at the Ministry of Justice, member of the Liberia Ad Hoc Elections Commission, member of the Liberia's National Legislature, and senior political advisor back in the interim days to Her Excellency Madam Ruth Perry, Liberia's former head of state. He is known as a very passionate political commentator, and currently he has his own foundation, the Gaia and Samira Fambule Foundation, which provides humanitarian services within Liberia. Ladies and gentlemen, Councilor Fambule. All right, I will proceed to introduce the representative of the second major political party in terms of ranking, the Congress for Democratic Change, represented by Mr. Isaac Bob Tukwa Jr. Mr. Tukwa professionally is a senior project and program manager with extensive experience in healthcare, information technology, and finance. He holds a BS in economics from Cotton University, magna cum laude, and also an MBA from the University of Maryland Smith School of Business. He holds a current project management certification, PMP, from the Project Management Institute. Isaac is married to Natalie Tukwa, sitting in the back, and has 4 kids, Yanita, Ivar Jr., Peyton, and Layla. Ivar is one who is very passionate about issues affecting Liberia. He has consistently advocated for peace and stability in Liberia with CCL, and he was a founding member. He joined in demonstrations in the past against dictators, including Samuel Doe and Charles Taylor, and he has served in the leadership of several Liberian organizations, including the Liberian community in the metro area, the board of directors of ULA, LUPD, Coalition of Concerned Liberians, and also an organization that he founded, the Leader Fund, which is the Liberian Emergency Disaster Relief Fund. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Toka. The next representative is from the third political party, the Liberty Party of Liberia, represented by none other than Mr. Abraham Darius Dillon Singh. Mr. Dillon hails from Grand Bassa County, as he preferred to be indicated here. He is a politician and was recently appointed as Senior Policy Advisor to the Liberty Party National Executive Committee in Liberia. He is former senatorial candidate for Musselwhite County in the by-elections, I believe, of 2010, 2009 to be correct. Professionally, Mr. Dillon has served as, in the past, as Chief of Staff in the Office of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and afterwards he served as Chief of Staff to the Senior Senator of Bunk County. In 2008, on the issue of corruption, he was sent to jail for exposing members of the Liberian legislature who were described to have been involved in an act of bribery. He obtained a certificate in courses relating to parliamentary procedure and legislative drafting from the Secretary of the Indian Parliament in New Delhi, India. He is currently enrolled at the Australia University in the USA, where he is majoring in legal studies. He is a family man, and he's been happily married for 16 years and blessed with two beautiful and loving children, Darius Dillon Jr. and Darius Seven. Ladies and gentlemen, Liberty Party Representative Darius Dillon. But last but not least is the representative of Liberia's newest political party, the Alternative National Congress, ANC. ANC is represented today by none other than the distinguished gentleman on my left here, Mr. Wilfred Passaway. As we can see, ANC tag on the table there is not as legible as the rest because it wasn't properly spelled. Apparently, the Election Commission, is still, the ink is still drying on their certification papers and everything. So maybe the information didn't get through to our staff. They misspelled actually the name, and we didn't want to disrespect the ANC by having a misspelled name. So it was properly, they were told to properly spell it out, as you can see, out of no disrespect. I know we have some councilors in the gathering from ANC, and we don't want to have anything filed against us soon. Well, Mr. Passaway is the chairman of the Alternative National Congress ANC USA branch. He is the owner and manager of Passaway International LLC and a management consulting firm that provides consulting services to various clients in the United States of America. He is a member of the board of directors of a number of private and public organizations, including the Liberian Development Group LDG, Thrust 80, and WazobiaJobsCompany.com. Mr. Passaway received his MBA from George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. He is a certified project management professional, PMP, and member of the Project Management Institute. Mr. Passaway frequently travels between Liberia and the United States. He is married to Mrs. Dorothy Torrance Passaway, who is here in the audience, and is blessed with 3 daughters. Ladies and gentlemen, our political panel, thank you very much. At this time, we will take opening remarks from members of our political panel, and we will start in the opposite direction. And for the fact that we did some minor injustice to Mr. Passaway in his name tag, will give him the privilege of being the first to present his opening remarks.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and we're very glad to be a part of this distinguished panel. I just conferred with our attorney, and he accepted that we don't need to pursue this any further. I think we all know that the issue of corruption, when one looks at the papers on a daily basis, look at the wires, and you see it's replete with issues, challenges regarding all sectors of our society. It can be found in schools, in the health delivery services, in our workplaces, even in the small community gathering. So we think the issue of corruption is a national challenge. It goes beyond just government and just the citizen. It's a total challenge for the whole society. Well, actions can be taken to reduce corruption. We sincerely believe that any time you have this kind of, this level of difficulty in your area of governance, in the social welfare and fabrics of society, one has to wonder whether this can continue unabated without some catastrophic circumstances down the road. We think not. We think that you have to address these and have to bring some balance and framework to approaching the solution. You cannot eliminate corruption. It would be a fool's dream to pursue that. I think what one has to do is one has to look at the circumstances, look at the pluses and minuses, and say where's the greatest impact to our social fabric? Where is the place that we must focus first, and how do we approach that to ensure that we can begin to bring value from the resolution we pursue for addressing these problems? The issue of corruption, there are two sides to corruption, addressing corruption. There's a tendency to pursue corrective measures after the event. We argue that equally or more importantly, one has to look at the forehand, the preliminaries. There has to be sufficient attention to internal controls. There has to be sufficient attention to deterrence, to put in place those things that will reduce the likelihood and create disincentives for people to be corrupt. Now, you cannot, again, like I say, eliminate corruption. But in foresight, if one knows that it is rampant in this particular environment, I don't think anyone can disagree with that, then the issue has to be addressed on the two-pronged approach. Preventive internal controls and preventive measures, and then the issue of getting after or going after those who have committed corruption. So it requires political will. To address a problem like that, one has to have the political will. It's intertwined with every aspect of our lives. The political class is entrenched. They have vested interests. So any attempt to address that must require the will of leadership. Political will is paramount to addressing corruption. We can enforce existing statutes. Yes, are there a need for new laws? We think so. But notwithstanding that, I think there are existing statutes and laws that can be enforced with the right political will to help us address this endemic. But there are some things we thought that you can immediately do without new laws, pending new laws. We think there are some things government can do. One has to remember, though, the government's influence is enormous in our society. Everything we do, almost a significant portion of the economy, is controlled by government. Resources are allocated and distributed by government. So again, when you look at corruption, one cardinal point in all this confronting situation is the money. Follow the money. So in other words, if government recognizes, and government has recognized through many meetings that stated that there is serious corruption in society, we think those things that government could do, or those who have the authority or wherewithal, are not difficult and don't necessarily all require any law. For example, we get three key things. Why not suspend immediately anyone who the GSC has identified as having been involved in corruption? We're not saying he or she is guilty, we say suspend them. You take them, put them aside, and you develop a policy. Give them their salary for a while, and then after 2-3 months, then you tend to get them away. Let them go until they resolve the issue. The second thing is, don't let negotiations be done by 2 or 3 persons in the corner. create a panel, technical panel to do that. Let them negotiate it open. And the third thing which we think is very important is put out in the public domain before you consummate execute these contracts. Let people see, especially if you're talking about extensive 50, 60 years contract. Let the population get to see. These concession agreements are lengthy, extensive, and they can cover enormous amount of resources. So transparency and accountability, we think, can be done now. You don't need new laws. Thank you very much.
We'll now have an opening from Mr. Ibrahim Darius Dillon from the Liberty Party.
Thank you. Greetings. I live from Liberty Party, Liberia. And our policies cut across our globe. Liberty Party likes to thank the organizers of this occasion. We want to wish you well. Just want to start off from where the ANC start. The government may not suspend anybody as a result of the GSC report because the government is saying those reports are not credible. So it's difficult to suspend anybody as a result of a report that is being described or granted as not credible. Liberty Party strongly believes that corruption is the act of impairing integrity, virtue, or moral principle. It is not telling that there has been a disappointing reversal of morals and integrity in our country. Corruption has permeated every fabric of our society to the extent that our minds, our attitudes, and our way, and the way we do things are entangled in its meanings. There is corruption in homes, communities, churches, schools, etc. There is corruption in our attitude to the extent that we Liberians, especially the younger generation, have developed high sense of hatred, envy, and jealousy that make people to go to length and breadth to destroy one another. Corruption poses a serious development challenge and it undermines good governance. This societal vice is shamelessly in our legislature to the extent it impedes accountability and representation in policy making. Corruption in the judiciary derails respect for the rule of law. Yet still, corruption in public administration results in the unequal provision of services and thus erode the institutional capacity of government to, as procedures are disregarded, resources are siphoned, while some of those accused or suspected to be engaged in this unacceptable act are either hired or promoted or just go without impunity, without any punitive measures taken. Corruption generates economic distortions in the public sector to diverting public investment away from health and education and into infrastructural projects where bribes and kickbacks are plentiful. Corrupt officials are found in the habit of increasing the technical complexity of public sector projects to conceal corruption. Dealings thus further distorting investment. Corruption also lowers compliance with construction, environmental, or other regulations. It reduces the quality of government services and infrastructure, and it increases budgetary pressure on government. Corruption undermines economic development in the private sector. And it also increases the cost of business through illicit payments, the management cost of negotiating with officials, the risk of breached agreements. Where corruption inflates the cost of business, it also distorts the playing field, competition, and thereby sustaining efficient companies and businesses. Labour Party believes that the government is not living up to expectations, especially in the fight against corruption. But Labour Party does not support any area call for removal of the current administration. We believe in the democratic process and do not support calls for President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf's resignation. We think the way to true national reconciliation starts with robust job programs for our urban and rural youths who have shared in the peace dividend. The government has failed to adequately address employment, but is admittedly doing well on the infrastructure front. Labour Party believes that if opportunities that seek to empower our people and give them a sense of economic security are provided for all Liberians, regardless of political, religious, tribal, or social beliefs or connection, people will begin to serve with integrity and even wish to retire at a certain or prescribed age, as it is the case in some parts of the Western world. In this light, Labour Party wishes to prevail upon our legislature to consider passing people-driven legislations that will provide state-funded financial aid and student loans, reasonable retirement benefits for our senior citizens and those who serve public service for over a protracted period. Finally, Labour Party does not believe that any Liberian citizen should be imprisoned unless convicted of a crime beyond a reasonable doubt, and any law to the contrary is unconstitutional. It is wrong to imprison Rodney Sear of the Front West Africa for 5,000 years for owing Mr. Christo, while former President Charles Taylor gets only 50 years for committing crime against humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dillon.
I'm a Rodney Sear guy. Sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we now have the opening remark from the Congress for Democratic Change, Mr. Isaac Topa Jr.
Thank you. On behalf of the Congress of Democratic Change, I would like to greet you all in a sedition fashion and extend the Muya, Muya, CNC Muya, the response. But that's fine with me. There's only sedition here. I'm just teasing folks. I'm a practical joker. But the topic today, corruption, whether it's the fault of the society, whether it's government fault, it's a kind of complex question. So we've got to lift up the layers and look at corruption from its definition. Look at corruption from its scale, from the sectors that are involved in corruption in general. We look at some of the consequences, we look at some of the solutions, then we can see exactly who we think the liability rests with in terms of the issue of corruption. So from a narrow definition, people generally look at bribery and extortion as corruption. But if you look at it from the wider sense, corruption is bribery, is extortion, is embezzlement, is influence peddling, is money laundering, and a whole bunch of other criminal activities in the financial sector and in the government sector that really inhibits development. So we look at somebody like Paul Volcker, who was the former chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve. He made it plain and simple, and I think somebody basically quoted him not knowing. Corruption is the enemy of economic development. I don't care how we do it, the diversion of our resources to individuals' personal gains affect the development of the country. And for those of you who have been exposed at this point so far to the audit of the Guthrie plantation that involved Christo and a couple of other people, it's clear to see how funds that were supposed to be used for something else were diverted and not used for the purposes intended. So obviously corruption is a cancer that affects our development. So from our perspective, we see the primary cause of corruption is greed and impunity. People are greedy and will always push the system. And they develop that impunity when the system will not hold them responsible and accountable, and the nuances they use to be corrupt and not transparent to the layman. Then the culture of governance has a significant impact on how corrupt people are. Let's look at leadership examples. We have significant number of audits. They've been on the books since 2007 to present. They have not been implemented or executed, but they are now being ridiculed and described as not credible. So how do we consider those issues not credible? And the fact that we have ambiguous law and regulations that are not being enforced, and they don't quantify them for people to understand exactly what needs to happen and affect corruption. So we've already heard people say it in all sectors. Yes, government, education, the church, the general society, the market, women, the cabinet, drivers. Everybody has some tendency of corruption. But corruption is on two different scales. There's petty corruption that's generally in the society, and then there's a grand corruption at the highest level of government that's already been referenced in terms of contractual negotiations, in terms of concession negotiations and other things. Then there are the systemic corruption where the institutions are weak, or just by general consensus that a particular government functionary or environment operate on a corrupt nature. They know that there's no teeth that can pass through if they don't improve. So the incidence of corruption is high. Yes, it involves the entire community, the entire country, but the burden of corruption rests with the government, because there's an indirect support of corruption because appointments and statements made by the leadership. For example, there are recycled corrupt officials today in our midst. That's not supposed to happen. If somebody has already been accused of corruption and basically proving to the point of an audit that they are corrupt, there's no need to reappoint them in government. So corruption undermines our economic development, undermines our political stability. As we know, in 1980 we had a coup, and one of the major words was rampant corruption. It undermines our national, social, and cultural fabric. It jeopardizes the allocations of our scarce resources to needed programs and projects. So from an approach of corruption, do we look at it from a principal agent perspective, one-on-one is one person, or do we look at it from a high-level collective action where everybody in society needs to? And that's the position we're coming from. We believe that everybody in society should be involved, but the principal agent for corruption should be government. The responsibility rests with government. We have laws in which the sanctions are very weak, from the Public Financial Management Law, the Act of 2009, and the regulations. So really, what do we need to do? Solutions. I will just run through them. Women and men willing to go fight against people they have known their whole lives, that will stand up and enforce the laws of the country and should be the ones identified to fight corruption. We need some automated instances like ID card, like public financial management, so that we can limit the interaction with cash. We don't need people touching money that will influence their behavior. We need strong enforcement, we need investigation, indictment, prosecution, and jail, as well as restitution or recovery of those monies. And when you talk about preemptive measures, we need to design preemptive measures, whether from the system point of view, from a detection of corruption, from creating new machine outlets for people, not only on the internet, but also in public places like the billboard for the Open Budget Initiative. You can use that. Anybody who affects revenue from government should need a machine. And significantly, we need to incorporate it in our educational system so that kids coming off from kindergarten can understand how the concept at their level, what education is, and they can gradually grow up to that level. So I'm saying the Auditor General also need to utilize Section 53.4 of the Act that created it and put people in places in every government ministry that has sensitive response to corruption to limit the activity there. So in conclusion, whose fault it is really? I believe it's the general society, but at the same time, the responsibility to ensure that the culture and the country is not corrupt rests with government, because they have the leadership, they have the social contract responsibility of looking out for the Liberian people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now proceed to the representative of the ruling political party, Mr. Gaya from the Unity Party.
Well, good afternoon. I'd like to extend my perfect thanks to everyone here this evening, especially to members of other political parties. It's a pleasure to be here, and let me just recognize one distinguished person here, I'm told from where I come from that age comes before beauty. So, Reverend Lord, welcome you. My distinguished friends and brothers, let me say here in a nutshell that the three speakers that preceded me laid the premise and spoke so eloquently. And I think I can only say that they are true patriots. I want to commend you for being true patriots. Based on the premise, I'd like to submit here that in defining corruption in my own chamber of justice, I'll say that corruption is more or less a spiritual or moral deviation from the reality that probably would achieve greater dividend. And someone started by saying at the lower level, it's called little petty trades here, graphs, and then favors in exchange for money. And then obviously, when it becomes systemic, then it rises up to where government cannot be absolved from whatever goes wrong. But I've said something very interesting. He said that society at large should be responsible for corruption. And I want to support that because if we are all true patriots and we love our country, I think we should try to protect what we have. I think it's unfair and not justifiable at all for a friend of yours whom you have grown up with all through the years, and the both of you are appointed to parallel government agencies, and the next day you see him with a house that he cannot justify how he built the house, and there you are still renting. Obviously, that suggests that there is something wrong, and that way it becomes an endemic situation. But I think that we have given, as librarians, we are giving a lot of descriptions as to what the faults are. I think it's now that we get together and find prescriptions on how to move Liberia forward. Because any little thing that happens to Liberia invariably affects all of us. And so, at this particular forum, I will be urging all of us to come up with solutions that can help the government in order to hold people accountable for corrupt attitudes. We know that government itself it's a heavy lift for government, but she owes the Liberian people a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that corruption is mitigated, one way or the other. Now, no one person has a solution for corruption. So therefore, it is all of our problems to brainstorm here and see what best solutions we can come up with to help government. And my distinguished friend and brother talk about the Rogers CA case. I think that case has been decided through the courts, but we're discussing some more. And government has nothing to do with it because here you have two private citizens, one taking another to court, and the court decided upon it, and then of course the lawyer for CA took an appeal to the justice in chamber, I think it was Banks, and they had 60 days to file for to file a meeting time deadline in order for the case to be heard. But Latches took over that because they didn't file in a timely manner. Latches took over that. But even beyond that, we are a small society and we all are a microcosm of our society. The imprisonment of Rodney C.A. I think should be looked at from a national perspective now, to see how best we all can come together to see if we can bring the both parties to a logical middle ground. But it has been decided by the courts, and whatever the courts say is final. So I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arnold. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for very, very eloquent and brilliant openings. It's a signal for a very good beginning. We thank you very much for reserving the time frame given you, and we expect that we'll go within that line. Before I proceed, I'd like to recognize a few distinguished personalities in the audience. I was tired of giving my father, who has been recognized, not because he's my father, but he's one of the senior persons we also have, as I saw, officials from the Liberian Community Associations here present, in person of President Lee Allison, the Vice President Lorena Sandu Kona, and other officials here, Mr. Creighton and others. We have our CCL Religious Advisor, Mr. Titus Clark, member of the board, who he wasn't here to give the invocation, but his blessing is with us, as I see him here. We have other distinguished individuals here too present. We have Councilor Kwame Clement, the chairman of Liberian Development Group. And we also have from Liberia a couple of distinguished guests here today. Our invocation was given by the Reverend Maxwell Weir from the United Church of Christ in Cinco Oro. And also, we also have Dr. Salif from Cuttington University College from Liberia too. Before we proceed now to the next phase of our deliberations, which will be given to the audience, I would just ask Dr. Salif if you can just give us 2 or 3 minutes greetings from Liberia, and then we'll proceed to the question and answer period.
Okay. Good evening, I'm Dr. Amos M. D. Salif. I'm a Liberian. I lived here for many years. Personally, I'm Liberian. I'm a Wesleyan translator, helping our people. The topic here is very interesting, and matter of fact, important to me. I was there when we participated in the complete eradication of those who perpetuated the corruption. I'm talking about in the 80s, who were young and active. But personally, we're talking about, I have written several papers on corruption. I realized that corruption actually is in the DNA, it's in the blood process. Because it's not only in the government, most of my brothers said, it's in the market, it's in the street. What can we do about this? Malcolm X took the black people problem to the United Nations. Okay, if I'm corrupt and you're positive, I am, and you can justify this, take your kids, take me to the United Nations. We said that child killer was the cause of our problem. Yeah, the head. Now we are intellectual. We don't want to take guns like happened in the past. The best way we can get rid of you is the pen, the ballot boxes, not the bullet animal. We are civilized people in the context of intellectualism. We are for peace. There's a corruption in our society. I'm aware of that. Corruption in the academic area. I'm aware of that. So I'm there to do my part. One thing I want to know here also from our people is that before some of us were gone, some of you were here. You went to school here, you went back home. But I have never experienced any replication of somebody putting your land here. You go to Liberia, you can't even think that a guy, you and me went to Yale University, you ain't went to Oxford. But he actually corrupt and he's not even doing anything. He's not doing anything with nothing. So these are some of the things. These are some of the things we're talking about. Why would you not plan, transplant 20 with them from here? I'm alone. I'm doing it. Come and see what I'm doing. I'm educating our people. I'm putting university. Hopefully, it will permeate the fabric of our society. But I can't make it. I'm getting rid of teachers who are abusing our women, our students. There are books on payrolls. I've discovered that we are working on them. This is deep, but I need your help. We political brothers and sisters, we have to start pushing with that in the direction. You're talking about corruption. The old heads are in the base, but you can't get rid of them. Doctors should run a new one, the young ones actually, to educate them to avoid the situation. I told you, it's a DNA in the blood process. But the blood is old, you can't get it out, you just put it outside, it's really new one, reality.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Salim. We all have corruption in our DNA. Where I inherited my DNA from a reverend and I still corrupt. Well, the floor is now open for the question and answer period. This second half of our event is devoted to the audience. We'll now engage the panel. We will take the first comment from, will be given by Mr. Jacob Jipley, who has established a website called BribeLiberia.com. It's a whistleblower website where Mr. Jipley and others have decided to expose people on their website who take bribe. He will explain within a minute or two on what the objective is as we proceed into the audience discussion now. Mr. Jipley.
Thank you very much, Rob, for having me here. I was hoping to do a presentation, really, but I'm sorry we don't have something like that. I think we've said enough about the issue of corruption. It's vast, it's pervasive, it's all over, it's in our bloodstream. So we chose to do just bribery. And the reason we focus on bribery is that's one aspect of corruption, which is a team sport. Whenever somebody gives a bribe, there's a recipient. Somebody asks for a bribe, there's an offering and there's somebody who receives it. So the issue is, because it's a team sport, if we as a people begin to catalog our experiences with people, we may be able to bring to bear what the cost of corruption is to Liberia, but more importantly, share our experiences. Because the thing about corruption is that because we all go do it behind closed doors, nobody knows what other person is paying. If I go to Liberia and say, oh, Joe, I got my passport in 2 days, and I gave the guy $10. Well, I just told you that, but you're not sure. The only person who knows for sure what he's receiving is a corrupt person in that office that's getting the money. So for me, I'm in the technology business, so I just decided to build a website called BribeLiberia.com, where you can go as a citizen or a visitor to Liberia, share your experience of corruption. If you walk into any ministry and somebody asks you for a bribe, if you give it to them, share that experience. What it does for us is that it tells us also how much money you pay. So we have analysis of that. What ministry is asking our people for money? Who are the people? And we are not interested in prosecuting people. The government will do that. The idea is that we can hold together as a community and begin to fight against these things. We do not have to have corruption in our DNA. I think, if it is there, so let's not a way of, just pushing ourselves against this. Because the only people who really benefit from this are the corrupt people in Liberia. We build their houses, we pay for their children's school fee in America when we have to struggle for ourselves. So we as a public, if we come together and can find a way of sharing our experiences, I think we can find a common ground to resist this endemic crime that is perpetrated against us. But with our complicits, because we are participating in this. This is a team sport. Nobody takes money from your pocket. You can embezzle. Embezzlement is a part of corruption. You can embezzle money. That's a single person going to take money. But corruption is a team sport. I mean, bribery is a team sport. Nobody bribes another person unless there are two people. There are at least two people in that crime. So if we are able to educate our people effectively, share our experiences, I think we can find a way to make a small dent. And so please go to BribeLiberia.com. You can access it through your website. It's very easy to use, even from your mobile phone. Let's tell our people to go there and cut along their experiences. Hopefully we can make a dent in this vast, humongous crime that is perpetrated against our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Jacob. BribeLiberia.com. Brother Lord.
I think we need to look at the genesis of corruption. The books of the Bible begin with another book. When I was born in year X, I started growing up, and I observed something very funny. We employ military people. We employ collector of customs. We employ nurses. We employ police. And you go on the list. The boss of each of those group of people in their professions getting so much X dollars. The people who do the actual work, we pay them less than peanuts money. When that tax collector go and collect that money, at the end of the month, I talk about him after this. The end of the month, they will give him about $50. $100 the maximum a month. And the minister over there, he carried tens of thousands, 20s of thousands, and 30s of thousands. What do you want that man to support his family with? How does he send his children to school? This is why most of us who are poor people in real made some kind of sacrifice. Our children will be educated today. So the people who were rich in those days took all the money and supported their children so their children would be the only people to have a system. But it's wrong. Today we have the poor people children getting education. We're going to make other sacrifices. Today that corruption continues. It started from, I don't know who president. I won't call any president because their relatives are here. Start from that president behind it. I observe most of God grew up in the Tottenham administration. That's the contribution I have to make. Let us tackle the people who are in the big positions to pay the people right. That's why the police all in the street behind the taxi drivers and other drivers to collect money. They write, I will take your ticket that now you better talk with. They go further and further. You go to the hospital, you ride in nurses, they will not treat you right. You don't ride a doctor, you will not get a right treatment. You don't bribe somebody somewhere, you will not get what you want. So let us tackle the people who are supposed to pay the people. Put money in the treasury to pay the people in America today. Corruption is here. Against it. Because if you're going to make enough money, you don't want to spoil that thing. When will we start paying our people?
Very excellent. Excellent commentary. Who here was next? I see a lady up. Oh, okay. I think Mr. Johnson's hand was up before.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and everyone who is sitting behind the table or at the table. First, I'm disappointed in the sense that as an Liberian and former president of the community, we do not have a representative at the table, at least for social integrity, because they live here, they can also help to, build your momentum up. But when it was a Good Friday, I think 1979, when Bishop Warner preached a sermon on a Good Friday. And in that sermon, I will never forget that he said that quote, "What is wrong with Liberia is us. What is wrong with Liberia is us." And this, whenever we get together and we're talking about corruption in Liberia, I always talk about that word. My brother, you spoke about the CDC, the Liberty Party in terms of what is happening in Liberia with regard to the editor-in-chief from Daesh. And then my brother brought it up, the coach spoke about it, and I read what the chairman said. He said he respected the verdict of the court. So I think it should stay that way, because that's the last place they want to go for whatever, but we can't go. My thing about corruption in Liberia is that I think it's maybe one incident that happened to me when the sixth one was in Liberia. I had the chance of going to Tamaha to pay people. And we had a doctor who is the administrator at the school. And when we got there, we had 220 children. And every one of those children were in different names. And I decided to take a check to back to Mr. Finance. The next day I got a call from the national said, "Oh, you went to the minister, to MCS and brought 250 checks." Okay? And so what happened was I went and explained myself. And that was the end of it. I think we in Liberia, the people in Liberia are afraid that just what Reverend Lord said. It's key, it's continuing to go. People make nothing and get nothing. And as a result of it, they continue to do the same thing. People continue to do I brought Minister of Defense. We had a soldier who was making 33 cents. He had how many wives, how many children. And so as a result, it was just something you get by. And so we need to put a lot of stuff together that at least it can mess them up. Because the team of warfare has been there for years and years and years. So again, I want to say thanks to you, and I hope we can have more of this.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, thank you. But before we proceed, the panel is here to respond to most of these issues as we try to find solutions. So please frame your statements in the form of a question that anyone here can address. I think this was, I think there was a reference to the statement made by one of the panelists here, Mr. Dillon. I think it's fair that Mr. Dillon respond to Mr. Johnson's comment before we proceed to the next question. Please form your statement in 30 seconds, no more than 30 seconds for your question, and make it in the form of a question to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. The Liberty Party has issued a statement that Liberia should be a country of law, and that the party respects the decision of the court. However, the party insists that there should be no time and point where a Liberian citizen or any human being for that matter will be sent to jail for 5,000 years. In keeping with our current law, the law states that failure to settle a debt of such, you'll be sentenced to jail to liquidate the amount at $25 per month. Rodney C.A. is sent to jail for $1.5 million US. That would take 60,000 months or 5,000 years. That law is obsolete, is archaic, it must be changed. That's the Liberty Party position. No Nigerian citizen should be languishing in jail for 5,000 years on account of a civil debt.
Met with that.
That's the Liberty Party position.
We got a discussion here. The next lady is in line, but this calls for rebuttal here from Unity Party Chairman, Mr. Pamela, to what Mr. Dillon is saying. Mr. Pamela.
Mr. Dillon, thank you very much for your expose. But let me say this though. You have what you call a table mounting declaration. A table mounting declaration was a declaration that was signed 2007 in South Africa. And the purpose of that declaration was to decriminalize or defamation. That declaration, Madam Sirleaf, I think sometime last year, endorsed it. And the press union also sent a draft to the Parliament to have it rectified. Now, but prior to that, if you check your books, it will tell you that libel is criminalized under our Liberian laws. Libel is libel is criminalized on our Liberian laws. But because the table mounting declaration has not been rectified by the national legislature, the government cannot do much. I personally believe that there is excessive monetary damages attached to that particular conviction. And what we should be doing as Nigerians is find a way to see how best we can mitigate the quarrel between Dr. Toh and Rodney C.A. Rodney C.A. is a personal friend, and I will do anything for him if it means talk to Crystal or other people so that he can more or less drop the charges, fine. But legally, the table mounting declaration has not been rectified by the national legislature. So I just thought to bring this as a way of clarification.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pamela. We'll take one more response from the panel, 30 seconds from CDC, and then our next person has the question up front.
Just want to make clear to people that if Supreme Court decision is not final, the Supreme Court actually dismissed the appeal by Mr. Rodney C.A. So there's no real Supreme Court decision on this issue. And even if there was, in this country before, the Supreme Court ruled for racism on the books. Laws can be changed, especially archaic laws that don't represent the interests of the people, or a situation in which a government agency, the GSC, General Accounting Commission, General Auditing Commission, has made it clear, and it's in the law of Liberia, that to appeal anything that the GSC says, if you feel any surcharge or allowance from the GSC is against your best interest, you have to go to the Supreme Court. Mr. Toh has not gone to the Supreme Court yet to relieve himself of that GSC burden. The government of Liberia has not gone to the Supreme Court to determine that any audit is not credible. So for the government of Liberia people, like the Minister of Justice, the Solicitor General, the Minister of Information, the Deputy Minister of Information to come out and talk against an audit from a credible institution of the government of Liberia just shows that they're undermining a specific branch of the government of Liberia, which is totally unacceptable. It just shows the breakdown in governance that we have today. So I think, again, today, on Front Page Africa, at the commissioning of new appointees to government, the president basically came down and intruded again in another civil matter. People claim it's supposed to be civil, but it's not anymore. It represents the government of Liberia. So it's clear that people pens are questioning us, directing it to these people in the press and say they are hustlers. I think those kind of comments are detrimental to our governance and to everything that we do as Liberians. So I think Madam Salim needs to temper her disposition, make statements that because she's quiet, it doesn't mean she's not strong, it's negative, it's reckless towards the perception of Liberian people and how they perceive her. So I would hope that the Unity Party can understand that this situation is not an individual anymore, it's the government of Liberia that is being represented negatively, and it reflects negatively on our country, and hopefully they can go back to the drawing board and try to get with people and see how we can find a resolution to this issue. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll now proceed to the next question. We'll take a hold on the Ramsey issue.
Thank you so much to the panelists and Mrs. Salif. I come from Howard University School of Law. I have just a quick question. And it is, we don't think it's a little bit late to talk about corruption now? That's my question. We don't think it's a little bit late to talk about corruption now, because I'm asking a question to say corruption, as my husband said, it's been in the Liberian community since its existence, and it has grown over the years. And right now, I don't know what we can do about it, because it has gotten to a point that is out of proportion. Way back then, when Reverend Lloyd said something about tax collection, when I was growing up, my father told me a story. When a tax collector went around, he gets to your farm and tie you up because you don't have money to pay him. So they got to a man's house, they tied him up because he didn't have money. My father got there and said, you tie this man up, how is he going to look for money to give to you? So what I'm seeing is corruption is in our bloodstream. What are we going to do about it now? What are we talking about it now? Are we going to do what? Are we going to stay here and dictate to the people to get rid of corruption?
Okay,
you tell me.
Is your question not directed to any specific member of the panel?
The entire panel.
Okay, well then I will let the guests respond to that.
Mr. Salif, thank you for your question. I think why it's important. I think why the subject of corruption is safe, redundant. Like everything else we learn in life. Your mom, your pa, you play the same thing, and sometimes you fall. You have problems learning. So part of the educational process is that while we know that corruption is in our DNA, we know that certain things that we ought to be doing better. It's not happening. But the big picture here is that for each of you that are here, that will be tomorrow's leaders, that if you look at it as an opportunity to be able to restrain yourself, because if you recall, you said, oh, I went to a town hall discussion, so that you won't make any excuses to say, why is it that if you're called upon to go to Liberia, to go and serve our country, you go there and do the things that others are doing. So it's an ongoing process, it's a continual improvement process. It is an opportunity for dialogue. So that's why I believe that, and when you look at the fact that people in Liberia, if you look at our national budget and the way things are allocated, compensation packages and so on and so forth, it's a disgrace. So at the end of the day, it's worth addressing, and it's something that we should continue to engage so we can learn and be better.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Miller. We'll proceed, make some progress. Mr. Clement.
Let me comment quickly.
Rodney Seal.
Let me just comment quickly on that situation. I think the Supreme Court has decision on the underlying case, whether Mr. C.N. Lido and Mr. Toole is final. It has been decided. What hasn't been decided is the constitutionality of the statute under which he was sentenced. It has been decided to the extent that Mr. C.N. didn't appeal, didn't perfect the appeal. The Supreme Court affirmed the lower court decision. Nowhere else you can affirm that. You can challenge that underlying decision, whether you have it to or not. What I think Mr. C.'s lawyer can do, remand what he called a collateral attack against his sentence, because that's never before the court, the constitutionality of that statute, and challenge that statute as a constitutional violation of the Equal Protection Clause and the Due Process Clause of our Constitution. Let me broadly talk to the corruption issue. And let me probably go against the green and say that I reject the proposition that corruption is the fault of all that. I think it's an easy out. The market woman who goes and sells hot sauce to feed her kids, she's not responsible for corruption. Not the farmer out there, not the pimping boy. Or do they take times to let it go? But you can't equate what they do to the institutional corruption that is like core problem in the country. And to somehow say, oh, it's the fault of all Liberians. I think it's an easy out. And it prevents us from focusing on where the problem lies. The government. And when I say the government, I don't mean the executive per se. I mean the legislature as well. The entire political class. How can it be, for example, that our country is set to enter 68 contracts, but only 2 of those comported with Liberian law? Is that the market woman responsible? Is that me or you? That's the government. How can it be? I don't know what the government is doing to prevent that or to rectify that. I don't know what the opposition is doing either. For CDC, Liberty, and other parties you represented in the legislature. How can it be you are approving those contracts? How can we talk about corruption when at the basic level we're sitting down and letting corrupt contracts go through? I gave you another example. How can it be that in one term of the legislature, somebody nominated to be Auditor General, with the nomination is withdrawn, and the legislature stands up with it? But in another term, that very person whose nomination is withdrawn because he doesn't meet the basic qualification, he falsifies CV, is then approved unanimously by the Senate. How can you approve that kind of nomination and yet talk about corruption? So that's my question to you. And the summary is, I think we find an easier way out to say, oh, it's the fault of the Liberian people. It's wrong to blame the ordinary Liberian man that's struggling to make a living for corruption in government. And what are the ruling class doing? The ruling party, you in the legislature, you who represented them, what are you doing to tackle corruption at the base?
That question specifically goes to all parties here except for ANC that does not have a representative in. I think it would be fair to get a response from Unity Party, Liberty, and CDC specifically, because I'll speak out of my home. How can you, Mr. Tupac, Mr. Dillon, or Mr. Famale, explain to this audience that you have representatives in the legislature and more to Liberty and CDC, since most of the time we hear the blame going on the Unity Party government? You have, scores of legislatures in the House and the Senate, and they are being accused of corruption and they approve corrupt officials and contracts. And then your parties are accusing the government of corruption. So can you explain what the parties have been doing according to what Mr. Clement just asked? Starting with you here.
Thank you. I will start off first by disagreeing with the learned man and saying that corruption is not in every Liberian's DNA. Let me just establish that. Secondly, to Madam Salif, I will let you know that it's not overdue because the country is an ongoing concern. We'll all die and Liberia will still be there. So the premise and the basis we set for the youngsters, like your husband was saying, and I suggested that we put in our curriculum in schools so people get an understanding of what corruption is essential. Now, and I'll just establish again that I disagree with the learned counselor on the whole issue of the Supreme Court, but that's another debate. But the issue he raised about the political parties, our chairman of the CDC is on record for saying the entire legislature is corrupt. Honorable Ambassador George Mia said the same thing. Last year, when people did not put a lot of focus on the budget, I wrote a scathing paper on the role of the executive and the legislature in fleecing the Liberian people. I call all of them highway robbers. I stand by that statement again for this current budget. And I would tell the Liberian people we need to identify people who will represent the right interests of the Liberian people, because those in the legislature now, they openly accept bribes and call it lobbying. Including CDC, I'm not. I said the entire legislature is an exception. Yes. They gave them $24,000 each to pass the recent Black 13. Black 13, each of them. And I have on record, I know one specific senator who's